Hi guys, it's Matt here again with part 2 of the sentence mining questions video. Hopefully you'll find this video useful. If you haven't seen part 1, then I suggest you go check that out as well. It's got a lot of questions in there too, which I answer about sentence mining. And as always, if you have your own questions, don't forget to ask them in the comment section down below. I'll try to actually answer your question in the comments, and if it's a question that I feel like a lot of people have, or it's a good question to have asked, then I might even talk about it in a future video as well. And yeah, if you like the video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I hope you enjoy the video and find it useful.
Hey Matt, just recently started sentence mining and had a quick question. When using Substr to make decks from anime, would it be a good idea to gather meanings from English subtitles? I find that sometimes I have trouble narrowing down the meaning of a word sometimes when it has multiple potential uses. E.g. summary, not sure if someone is referring to the fact that it's cold or a lame joke that happens before the card audio that I don't remember. I figured taking meanings directly from the English subs would be quick and useful, but wanted your thoughts beforehand. Okay, so this is an interesting question actually, because I never really thought about doing this before until someone recently asked me to make a monolingual deck on my sentence bank that I do on Patreon, and so I made a bilingual deck. I'm not sure if I just said monolingual, but I meant bilingual. Someone asked me to make a bilingual deck on Patreon, and so I made one for Attack on Titan because there are subs in English for it, there are subs in Japanese for it, and they are timed up perfectly with each other because I don't know, I just happened to find subs that were perfectly timed. I know it's a miracle, but and so I just made Attack on Titan. I made the first season, put it into a deck, and it's essentially just the English on the front with the picture, and on the back it has the sentence again with the reading, and it also has the English translation. Now, it's not really a translation because you got to remember these are subtitles. So the way people do subtitle translation is they may have the sentence order in a complete different order. So you may actually have the wrong piece of English on the back of the card, essentially, and it might be like the next card, the next sentence. So for example, if someone says a long sentence, because of the sentence order in Japanese and the sentence order in English being pretty much opposite, you may find that for one card, you have the end of the next sentence in the next card, if that makes sense. So it's not perfect. It is something that you could do, and I don't think it's. I think it could be useful, to be honest, because it sort of goes along the lines that I was saying in the previous video about using a pre-made deck with English translations on the back, and it gives you a better understanding of the sentence and the situation as a whole. The only issue is you got to make sure that you don't rely on the English and that you're not just sifting through cards and reading English, because that is something that some people do. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people recommend not using English at all. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it can work, and I think you could definitely make it work. I don't see why not. As long as I say before, you just stick to 500 to 1,000. You don't go too far with it. And yeah, you make sure that you're not trying to translate in your head, or you're not trying to correctly guess the English. Just use the English as a bit of a nudge, as a bit of a guide. As long as you've got a rough understanding of what the sentence means, then that's good enough. You don't have to be 100% perfect with the English. That's all I would say on this. And yeah, you can do that really easily in Substr, providing the subtitles match up. And I think the program might even resync them and try and line them up. If it doesn't, you can line them up in Substr with some options. You can like buffer. There's a couple of options that you can play around with to try and line them up if you don't want to do it in AG Sub or another subtitle editor. So you can do that. And then you just tell Substr to do its thing, and it will also generate English subtitles. It'll also put English into the flashcards as well. You'll just have to create you might have to create an extra field, or possibly when you import it into Anki, so when you import it into Anki, you'll have an extra option for the English, and you'll just put that into the meaning section. That's what I would do. Okay, down for the next one. I have a question on how to filter out sentence cards from Subster SRS. If I have an idea of the meaning of the sentence, but I don't know all the pronunciations in the sentence, should I save the card for later, or should I delete the card? Or should I stick with I+1? And by I+1, I just wonder if the following sentences are counted as I+1 sentence. 1. Do not know the furigana of 2 or more words, but know the meanings of 2. Right. Don't know completely a word, including meaning, pronunciations, etc. Sorry for the lengthy questions. Thanks for all the resources on the blog and YouTube. Okay, I see what you're saying. So what exactly is I+1? And I've kind of talked about this in a video on Patreon about I+1. And I've essentially kind of said that I wouldn't worry about it too much and just sort of go with your sort of go with your gut feeling. And don't worry, because it's not a definite thing. Because it could be that you don't know like 2 or 3 words, but all those 2 or 3 words, you may be on the brink of just knowing them. You may have seen them enough times to be at the stage where you might just be able to know them. And if you kind of understand the rest of the sentence, then if you look up all those words, there's a chance you might be able to understand the entire sentence and learn 3 words where you could have learned, 1 possibly, if you skip that card, for example. So it's not something that's set in stone. Yeah, what I would say to that is I don't think it's necessarily I+1. I can see where you're coming from, but I+1 refers to comprehension. It refers to understanding the meaning of a sentence. So in your example, if you don't know the furigana of 2 or more words, but know the meanings of 2, so if you take that example, take an entire sentence and say, so you understand, and you understand the entire sentence and all the words in it. However, there are 2 words of which you don't know the reading of. That's basically what this is saying. So in this example, the sentence is you're fully comprehending the sentence. You're fully understanding it. There is no I+1. You're just the I. There's nothing to learn in terms of comprehension. However, there are 2 words which you don't know how to pronounce. So this has got nothing to do with I+1. It just means you don't know how to pronounce the words. That's fine. What you can then do is you just look up the dictionary definition, find the reading, put that on the back of the cards. You don't even need to add the dictionary definition because you already know what it means, so it's perfectly fine not to add it. And yeah, you could just get away with adding, the readings on the back. You might even want to go to an online resource and find like a native speaker speaking those words, get that audio and put that on the back of the cards if you want to. That is something you can do. And yeah, just add the sentence to your sentence deck. There's no problem doing that. In fact, I think it would probably be a good idea to do that because then it reinforces, it helps you learn how that sentence is read and how those words are read. What you might find is, though, that these sentences, because you do understand them, once you have fully understood, once you have fully got a grasp of how these words are read, you may delete these sentences in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months, which is perfectly fine. You can, that's part of the process is adding sentences that you need now and then deleting them later when you don't need them anymore. That's perfectly fine. As for the second situation where you don't know a word completely, including meaning and pronunciations, as I just said, yeah, that is what I+1 generally means. It means like not knowing a word and its pronunciation because you don't know the word at all. The pronunciations, in essence, don't really come into comprehensible input because you can comprehend a Japanese sentence without actually knowing how it's read, which is something that's very interesting about the Japanese language and obviously the Chinese language. Because of kanji, it is possible to read these languages without fully understanding how to actually say them or speak them out loud. I don't think there's anything more. Oh, he does ask, should I save the card for later or should I delete the card if he doesn't know the pronunciations? No, so you can save the card for later if you're filtering out stuff. That's perfectly fine. And actually, okay, this is a good point actually, because this is something that I did do when I was doing this. So when you're using Substar SRS, what I like to do, and what a lot of other people do, is you make the deck, so you have like 4,000 cards. You then watch the TV show, or if you have already watched it, that's fine, just start studying. But make sure you always watch the TV show first, then you can load up the deck in Anki. You can go through a sentence at a time, and you can like go through each one. And then what you do is when you go through each one, you delete the ones that are too easy, or that are really too hard. And then you like save the ones that you think you will sentence mine later on. So you use like Shift 1, I think it is, to suspend the cards. And then you can go back to the cards later and actually study them, get the dictionary definitions and then actually learn and review them. Now, during this process, you can actually study cards, obviously, because you're in Anki, you're in the study thing. You're not actually, there's nothing different about it. You're just deleting cards and saving cards instead of actually like learning and reviewing. So what I did do is I did this. If there was a sentence where I was like, okay, I understand this sentence, but there's a couple of words in here that I don't understand how to say, then I would just instantly hit space, hit it good, and basically learn it whilst I was filtering out cards. And it is definitely something you can do. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And then occasionally I would end up with a lot of cards that I'd learn during this filtering process, and then I put them into my sentence deck as well. The only issue I had with this is if you do this too much, you'll easily learn a lot of cards, which is both good and bad. It's obviously good because it shows you're learning lots of pronunciations, which is great. It's also bad because you get loads of reviews. However, those reviews are easy because there's not a lot to learn. And also, if you do this, make sure you delete these pronunciation cards once you know the pronunciations. So once you get to the point where you can read a book and you can read all these words easily, you just skim across them and you can read them, and you always get the reading correct. You never get the pronunciation wrong, and you never second guess yourself. Once you get to that point, then make sure you start deleting these cards and quickly, because they would add up, because they're very easy to add to your bank because you're filtering through. Okay, so the next question is, I have just started mining my own sentences in JJ format. I was previously using a JJ deck made in I+1 format from JLUP. Yeah, I've heard people say they've used that before. I've never seen it myself, never used it myself, but I know some people do use it. How long should it take to make 50 sentences, format it and put it into Anki? I find myself using up tons of time just finding definitions inside definitions, making new cards for each of them. So at the end of the day, if I had chosen 15 new sentences to add to my Anki, I end up making Anki cards for only 15 to 20 of them, as 30 plus are just related to the 15 to 20. And the branching process is quite time consuming. I might just be spoiled from using a pre-made deck. It took me about 3 hours to put 50 cards. Is that too much? Yeah, that is something you'll notice if you've used a pre-made deck, and once you move to making your own deck, you will find that you do have to put in a lot more work because you have to manually make stuff yourself, and so it can be annoying, and also it makes you want to go back to using these decks that are pre-made for you. However, I recommend you don't do that because, as I said in the previous video, it's not a good idea. To sum it up, the content's not tailored for you specifically, so it's not going to be as useful. So you need to be making your own cards, really, and you just have to put the effort into making it. As for whether 50 cards in 3 hours is feasible, I mean, I used to do about 50 cards in about 2 hours, so you could probably speed it up a bit. I'm not sure I think it's because of the branching process. It's probably taken you that much time, and it's probably because you've just started doing this, so you're sort of getting used to doing it. Once you get into the swing of things and you learn all the shortcuts in Anki, you do sort of learn how to do this like really quickly. So you will definitely find that it will get quicker, and I think that using the branching process is very time consuming, and it's something that I didn't like doing either. And specifically using the branching process with a dictionary is something I didn't like doing. So what I would end up doing is, this is the entire reason pretty much that I made my sentence bank and made Anki cards and Anki decks using Subster SRS, was because I could just have all these decks in Anki, and then you can use the Anki browser to search for specific words or even sentences, but mainly just words. So if you come across, if you're learning a sentence that's I+1, you find a word that you don't know, you can then put that into the Anki browser and search for all the other flashcards that have that word in it. Anki will show you all of them, and you can just read through them, and you can just quickly read through them, get a feel for the understanding, and then you don't necessarily have to look up a dictionary if you get it kind of straight away. Sometimes you might not get it straight away, and you might still have to look up a dictionary, and that's perfectly fine. And then when you do look up a dictionary, the dictionary definition might be complicated. It might have all these different words that you don't understand, and that again you're going to have to look up either using Anki in the browser or through a dictionary. However, I found that if you looked up words that were in a dictionary definition in Anki in the browser and actually used other flashcards as an example, using example sentences essentially, you could get a better comprehension and a better understanding of these dictionary words using real life example sentences from TV shows. That is something that I found really helpful because dictionary explanations are either very short and therefore hard to understand, or very full of complicated words, or full of words that obviously you've never seen before because you're new to this process. And these words are often dictionary specific words. They're often words that are only really used in dictionary explanations, therefore making them quite hard to understand. However, they are also used outside in real life, and therefore that's why I'm saying it's a good idea to search for them in Anki in your Subster SRS decks, because there's a good chance that someone somewhere in some TV show has used that word in the way it's meant to be used, and then you can sort of get a better understanding like that. And I always feel like learning the words like that is a lot quicker, and I just found it a lot easier and a lot less difficult. Basically, a lot easier doing it that way than actually constantly using a dictionary and branching off of dictionary definitions and then going from one definition to the next definition to another definition. It's just so boring doing that, so time consuming. I hated it, which is why I used Subster SRS to change it up and make it easier. And make it less boring. So that is something that I would recommend doing. It still does take a long time to make cards. That is a thing. It's nothing you can really do to get around that besides physically speeding up your fingers, learning the shortcut keys on Anki. Okay, the next one is, if we assume I don't have a sentence bank yet, any recommendation on places to find example sentences for words I'm adding outside of my immersion material, e.g. words used in the definition itself? So this is similar to the last one. What about words not found in a sentence like context, such as YouTube, views, counter, gaisho? Would a picture of that region with the word circled be better, or would a sentence be better in this case? These are some good questions. The last question, I would either not add the word or find a sentence that the word is in and then add that sentence. If it's always out of context and it's always by itself, then you could definitely include a picture of where where it's used as a way of helping you understand the context it's used in, because that is essentially what you do with, or what I do with Substar SRS decks anyways. I have a picture of the scene where the sentence is from. So you can definitely do that, and then just have the word by itself. I think that would work. I don't see the issue with that. And with regards to the first question, words used in the definition itself. Where would you? Okay, so basically, if you don't have all these decks created yet, but you want to search for example sentences, where would you go to do that? There's a couple of resources that you could use. Obviously, the first one that comes to mind are Japanese dictionaries. They often have at least one or two example sentences where a word is used. The only issue with those is sometimes the sentences can be from like old literature, and they can be very complicated and like very hard to read. Another source is, okay, I can't find it for some reason. There used to be a website that was that basically just had loads of example sentences on it. I will see if I can find it somewhere. Someone must know what it's called and where it is, and I will link it in the description below if I can. Pretty sure like a lot of people are using it. I can't remember what it's called though, because I never used it myself. The issue with that website, and the reason why I didn't use it, and I might talk about this in more detail at some point, but it's essentially like you don't necessarily know where the context of where it's being used. You get a bit of context for the sentence, but you don't know if you haven't read the book that the sentence is from, it's a bit hard to really truly understand how the word's being used. So it's a subpar replacement, but you can use it. Another thing is just Googling it. You Google a word. If you put speech marks around a word when you Google search, or if you put speech marks around anything in a Google search, it actually means that Google will search for web pages that have to have this word in, or have to have this phrase in. So you could search for a specific word in Japanese, and it'll only display websites that have that word in, and it'll only just, you often get an excerpt from the website in Google search results, so you can often just skip through and read different sentences with the words in and get a rough idea of what the word means. And also you can also just go on the website and just read through and have a look. So that is also something you can do. There is something else. You can use Notepad++. You can chuck loads of text documents of Japanese, like books or something, that you convert into TXT format, or you can chuck in subtitle files and put them all into Substar SRS. And then you can use Control F, and then you can search throughout all these different files. You can have multiple files open at once, and you can search for the word throughout like hundreds of files at the same time, and then it will come back with results with the word in example sentences in loads of different contexts in loads of different files. That is also something that you can do, and that's pretty much the things that I used. Notepad++ was the thing that I used before Substar SRS, before I started using Anki to do this. So that's worth looking into. And I actually do have a video about that on Patreon, I believe. Yes, I do. Yeah. If you want to have a look. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. If I did immersion with the same shows as your decks, would you recommend that to get me started after RTK? Currently doing traditional learning in uni, but it's pretty shit. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Gonna start RTK and already watching shows without subs to immerse. Brilliant, sounds good. Once you finish RTK, just watch the shows, as I say, before doing the decks. Yes, definitely do that. And I would even recommend getting the shows, converting them to an MP3 format, putting them on your phone, and then listening to them throughout the day as you're going about your daily chores and stuff. Because what you'll notice is that when you're going through the sentence cards in Substar SRS, and you're like deleting ones that are too hard, or you delete ones that are too easy, especially the ones that are too easy, and also the ones that you do actually end up learning, you'll find that these both stick out to you quicker and like a lot easier, because you're constantly listening to the same content, and you'll also find that even the harder ones become slightly easier to pick up on. It sort of trains your ear slightly, because you've already been exposed to them, and therefore, like, I don't know, your ear just sort of picks up on stuff quicker. At least that's how I felt anyway. I don't know if, it's not, I don't have any statistics or numbers on this. I can't necessarily prove that it's faster than anything else, but that's just how I felt at the time. I just felt like I noticed a lot more by doing this. So I definitely recommend putting stuff on your iPod, putting the shows on your iPod and listening to them throughout the day over and over if you can. I must have listened to the first season of Sword Art Online God knows how many times. I know that I'm a bit late when it comes to asking questions, but I had a question about sentence mining. I've been doing Age Out for about a month now. When sentence mining, do you recommend only studying +1 sentences that you got from the original context of what you're reading, or would you also take words you found useful from sentences you can't understand completely and find sentences? I find that when I branch out from the context, I have a harder time remembering the context from which the work came from originally. They're basically saying is, here is, would you not just learn +1 sentences, but if you see a sentence that you really don't understand entirely, would you sort of chunk away at it by learning one word at a time, and then come back to the sentence later on, and then try and learn it? That is something that you can do. That is something that I did. It's part of the sentence mining process. You may hear a sentence that sounds cool, and you may be like, I really want to learn that, but I don't know what it means. I think it's different. There's all sorts of different ways of doing this, and it's not all set in stone. And so, yeah, I'd say you can do that if you want to. If you see a sentence and you don't know all of the words in the sentence and you want to know them, then take those words, find sentences for them, make sure that they are as comprehensible and as you can possibly get. Try and understand try and make sure where the sentences are coming from, whether it be a TV show you've watched or a book you've read. This is where I talk about the sentence bank, and this is why I like using the sentence bank, is because you can do that. You can, in this situation, you could easily learn these really hard sentences by taking the words one at a time, finding comprehensible sentences that are in your sentence deck that you haven't learned yet, learn those sentences, and then you can come back to the original sentence in a couple of days when you already, when you've finally learned all the words that are in it. And by that point, you should be able to understand the original sentence. So that is something you can do, and it's something that, while I wouldn't recommend doing it a lot because it's a bit time consuming, it's something that I can say that you could do that, and it's not a bad thing. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll be posting more videos soon. I should hopefully be posting more videos like this because I do get a lot of questions. If anybody else has any questions, then don't be afraid to ask. I will be doing this more often because I do get a lot of questions, and I also get a lot of questions that are very similar and that are, or even the same. And so I want to make sure that I cover those and make sure that everybody everybody that needs to hear their question heard, gets their question heard, because I can reply to every single one of you one by one, but at the end of the day, that response is only seen by one person. Whereas if I turn it into a video, then a lot of people can see the response and see my opinion on, basically your questions, and so I can answer a lot of people's questions in one go, essentially, and help more people that way. So I think that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be trying to, do this more often. I don't know. I guess I could call it a Q&A. What I'll probably do is I'll just put on the title like one of the questions that was asked, and then just go into it like a Q&A, I guess. But yeah, I think it would be a good idea, especially because there are just so many things. That there are so many questions that people, that you have in the beginning stages, and I was exactly the same. I remember constantly worrying about all these small different things, and I only had after uploading my first video, after that I had Map vs Japan to sort of talk to, and so I would I wouldn't necessarily hassle him a lot, but I would ask him questions every now and then. and because he was the only person that I really could ask questions, to. And so yeah, it's difficult because there's so many things. There's so much in this process, in the entire process, that you don't know whether you're doing things right, and I completely understand. I know how it is. So don't be afraid to ask your questions. I will get to them eventually, and I'll probably make it into a video and talk about it there. And yeah, if you really liked it and you want to get more content from me, then you can check out my Patreon. I have extra videos up on there, ranging all sorts of different topics, and I will be posting more on there. Obviously, I also have my sentence bank on there, so I have like loads of Anki decks basically for you to download straight away right now. I believe it I'm not sure how it works in MediaFire, but I'm pretty sure you have to wait a bit to download stuff, so you can't just download them all in one, which is a bit of a shame, but there is loads there. There's 60, 70 plus, and it's that's a good probably over 300,000 flashcards, I would have thought, probably if not more. I'm not entirely sure, don't quote me on that. But there's a lot. So if you did, then definitely check that out. Just really, wanted to say thank you to everybody who is supporting me on Patreon right now, especially Diedrich, Eric, and R. And, all of you guys are brilliant. It's just great being able to be able to get paid for this, I guess, to be able to actually, also, one, help people, and also, two, being able to pay my bills. So it's awesome. I really appreciate your guys' support. It means so much to me. And yeah, thank you again, guys. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.